the weather's nice, which is good because that's kind of about all there is going on. At least if you're a Boston sports fan. Um, for first time in several years, we have no Bruins, no Celtics. I guess it's not a new thing that the Red Sox aren't relevant in June, but I digress. So we're gonna kind of figure out what we're going to talk about today. And I think the big thing is we're going to talk about other sports media also trying to find stuff to talk about. We obviously have the Patriots are in action, so to speak, with their offseason program. And the big news, again, in quotation marks, the big news has been Stefon Diggs. To quickly recap for anyone who doesn't know, but if you don't know, I'd imagine that this podcast is not going to be of much interest to you anyway. Stefon Diggs was caught on social media. Caught's probably too strong a word. He seems like he was well aware of the video capturing devices. He was partying, having himself a good time with some members of the opposite gender. Live your life, dude. But he was spotted with a substance. And the substance, what it was, what it wasn't, whether he should have been there or been in Foxborough, was the subject of much consternation for the past week or so on airwaves, in print, on TV. Stefon Diggs seems to have been come back now, and everything seems okay with him and Mike Vrabel. It appears that this thing has kind of been put past them. I guess before I get your guys' thoughts, my reaction when I first heard it was this is not a big deal, but it's going to be covered as though it is a big deal. And the reason I felt that way is for the aforementioned reason that there's not really anything else to talk about. If you are a New England-based sports entity, and anything regarding football is always going to shoot to the top of your ledger. So an indiscretion, however major or minor, you feel the presence of an alleged uncontrolled substance is, it's gonna end up getting beaten to death. So that's why I was surprised and unsurprised by the reaction. Once you guys finished clutching your pearls, what's kind of been your impression of the coverage of Boatgate or Pink Baggy Gate for Stefon Diggs?
Logan, you feel like
Well,
an expert on the pharmaceutical world, so why don't you kick this off?
oh boy.
Certainly not an internet IT expert. I'll tell you that much.
Holy smokes! Guys, I connected to my hotspot. This is just a whole debacle. This is with upgraded internet speeds, by the way. So it also doesn't help them clearly in a cage.
You look prepped for any sort of nuclear fallout, though, at the very least. So.
Yeah. Oh, dude, if I pull this curtain from behind me, I've got all of our Costco stuff back here. I'd be just fine if a plane crashed. But so I have a couple things that are like half joking, but I'm just going to get them out of the way first. So when drug things come up for sports, regardless of what the substance is, I feel like some people start telling on themselves about how immature they are. Journalists, that is, like, I think that you can have a conversation about Stefon Diggs being around drugs without it being like he needs, this is going to like come down with a massive hammer, or that like there's this bigger picture thing. And then the other part of that is I'm not condoning anything he did, but if you really want to spin it, he was trying to dole it out in portions and be like, hey, don't do this all at once. So as far as having drugs is concerned, he probably was the most responsible as he could be. That said, he should.
Yeah, that's
now that
okay. What a reading of that. Yeah.
I just one of those things, that it's like, it certainly doesn't make the optics of the situation better. It makes none of it better. But that is one of those things that it's like, well, if maybe he told Mike Vrabel that, like, that is one way to spin it. There's also no evidence that he was doing it. So it's all we're left with is conjecture, basically. And so, I agree with the notion that if this would not be getting beaten to death if it was not May and every other team in the market was bad. But I don't know, like it shouldn't be a big deal. Like Mike Vrabel was right to call him and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like that. Yeah, absolutely. Don't make sure that stuff doesn't end up on the internet. Nothing good happens when NFL players go on boats and things end up on the internet. But it's just like this is the type of thing that they really should move past, because if you want to start digging into every player's off-season activities, you're gonna have a tough time fielding a league.
I got a couple things. I do want to circle back to the it's May thing, and that's why it's a big deal, because I think the player is a big part of it, where it's if this were backup tight end, like it wouldn't be as big of a deal. So that is part of it. Also, I don't want to sound overly puritanical, like, but I get it. Yeah, football players do this sort of stuff, and especially during the off season, which it technically is, but like if it's an illegal substance, it's still an illegal substance just because you can run a 4.4 40 or whatever and catch a touchdown. So like it's a bad decision in that regard. Like by the letter of the actual law, yeah, it's a bad decision. And like if you make bad decisions, however bad they may or may not be, there could be consequences to that somewhere down the road, and you have to be mindful of that. Which leads me to the bigger point, which Logan kind of already hit on, is like, you're an idiot for letting it. The second you see somebody holding a phone, you take that thing and you chuck it into whatever body of water that you're in, because you should have done that before they got in the goddamn boat. Like, what are we doing? And like, maybe do we know what the source of this is yet? Like, has anybody come out and
No, I've been so fascinated by that.
Which, like, it feels like they're like basically making a whole movie. I don't think this.
Yeah, it's like fly on the wall. It's like, who is this person?
It wasn't like it was so out in the open that it felt like he knew and was okay with it being taped. And like, if that's the case, then like you're just making dumb decisions, and that like it's not the end of the world. I don't think he should be cut, but like I also don't think the discussion about him being cut was insane, because this guy has no cachet with this organization. They don't owe him shit. B, it's a brand new head coach who's trying to instill a new culture after some really, really bad seasons. And C, he's got a bit of a checkered past. Not necessarily with this sort of thing, but he's been a headache at various points in his career in other places. I know he got a lot of credit for being the best teammate in the world last year, if you ask CJ Stroud or whoever else. But like, go ask Josh Allen what he thinks of him as a teammate. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that when you add all of these up at the same time, it becomes far more prevalent in my mind.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, so like you mentioned, like it's illegal. Like, so that was kind of my question. Like, yeah, he wasn't on video snorting anything or whatever it is you do with that substance. But like possession is still a crime, right?
Oh yeah.
So like that was my thing.
No,
like,
he was committing a crime.
If you post a video of yourself committing a crime, isn't there like you can still be prosecuted for that or whatever? And I'm not saying like throw the book at him, but I'm like I'm
international waters. I think he gets.
He's a sovereign citizen out there. But yeah, I was like, well, like there's no like legal ramification of like a fine or anything like that. Like you don't even have to, So I don't know. I don't know the rules, but I was he is on video doing
right?
committing a crime.
It could have been like strawberry Nesquik or something. Like if you know what I mean. So.
Well, and that's I mean, if it's pink cocaine, like that's what Liam Payne had in his system when he died. Like that stuff's no joke. So, it again, agreed. Like it's illegal. He shouldn't have done it. To me, it's kind of like I think it's branching off into conversations that are kind of nonsensical. So, like to the point about the Texans, it's like. Yeah, I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that he wore out his welcome in Houston, no matter what they say, because they let him walk for really not that much money and then proceeded to draft 2 wide receivers. So it was like if they really wanted him, he probably could still be in Houston. So And the same thing with Josh Allen. So it's not like there isn't a past here, but I've seen arguments that are like, well, now he's dating Cardi B and he's going to the Met Gala. Like, is he at that? Like, I do not give a damn what the guy is doing in May, as long as it's not outright criminal, which this might have been. But even still, it's like, I don't know. For me, it's just like a goalpost moving thing for the NFL that it's like, we're going to come down so hard on a guy because we see a video of him with a bag of what we think are drugs. And, it's a coin flip on every other form of punishment. So like that's kind of my thing on it.
So you identified the substance. I have been careful not to identify the substance because one thing I have learned in the last week is that drug identification interneters are up there with gun interneters, where like you've ever been that, like if you express like an opinion on like a firearm, they're like, you said handgun, you can't even tell a Ruger 22 long rifle when you see it, like. And that's the thing, is anyone who's like, oh, this is such and such substance, like, no, that's clearly such and such, include laced with this, like if you can't even identify that, then you like, oh, okay, I don't know the exact chemical compound, but I can tell it's probably probably not
if it's
salt.
If I didn't already, I should have put a big if that's pink cocaine, because I don't know, it could be anything.
But it's just pedantic as all hell.
My eyes are telling me from a video. If you really want to get granular into drug composition.
I also think like his contract is a big part of it too, where, and I think that's, again, like if the basis of this conversation is like, why do people care and why was it a story? Like, it's the contract and paired with like his knee, right? And so he's coming back from a torn ACL. He's got however much of it is guaranteed money. Like, they had, based on the Pro Football Talk report, like they had an out in his contract that they could have gotten out of it if they wanted to. So like, again, I think there are some people, like there are just as many people who are like, I can't believe an NFL player is doing drugs in an off season. I think there's just so many people conflating like every pushback on it with it being like, ew, I don't want drugs in my NFL players. That, and like the other thing is too, I meant to mention this earlier, is like this all presumably happened while like his teammates were working out in Foxborough, and that's another tough scene, especially when you're trying to make a good first impression, which I would try to do if I were him.
Yeah, that's fair. I although when it comes to like optional off-season activities with veteran players, I kind of look at it the same way I do with like spring training with veteran baseball players. I'm like, I don't think the presence there is. I get though he
was there 2 days later though. Like,
what's that?
I said he was there 2 days later.
Yeah, but do you think he would have been there 2 days later had it not been for this?
Depends how much money is coming out of the boat.
I don't.
You think he just turned the boat as soon as the video came out? He's like, "All right, due north, my friends. I think I gotta be in the marina."
He's Vrabel on the phone. He's like, "What the hell just happened?"
I'm a Viking now. There's. It depends if the Knicks had won, if that changes things. I don't know. He could be in Oklahoma City tonight.
I guess I'll just to finish this up from a sports perspective. You guys see any long-term impact on the Patriots for this? I personally think it'll, if he ends up being healthy, I think we forget about it by, well before preseason games come around.
Yeah, I think it would be very easy for this type of thing for them to move past. And a quick thing that also just sprung to mind was they had a similar issue in a way with Jabril Peppers, at least, like even through all the court system, but like there was cocaine, like that was part of the police report, was that there's said to be cocaine. And so it's like, again, like where's the line on some of this stuff, especially when you start getting into legal matters. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to have much of an impact. The one thing I would say is, I have been pretty critical of that receiver room and the behavior that they possess. So from the leadership standpoint, and he was supposed to help rectify some of this stuff, then, I guess maybe that takes a hit. But I also think that whatever he was doing on that boat doesn't preclude him from being a useful football player still. And if he can impart wisdom that way, like, who cares what he does during the offseason? So that's kind of the way that I see it. I mean, 2 days later, it might have been, state media, but we start seeing this video of him helping, what was it, Javon Baker or Jalen Polk? He was with one of them and the wide receiver coach on the side. So, like, I don't know. I have a hard, if I'm sitting here and saying I don't think it's that big of a deal, I can't sit here and say that would have any sort of material impact on the team.
I think coincidentally the ice on which he's standing is a little bit thinner now, but it's, like, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt moving forward. But to Logan's point, I was just going to say this too, is like, if you talk to anybody who was at practice the other day, the only thing anybody had to say about Steph Diggs was how awesome he looked. And yeah, there was that video of him working with receivers on the side. So, like, all that stuff goes away real fast when you produce and you act like an adult.